If you're looking to use podcasting as a vehicle for growth in building your brand, creating more relationships, and making a positive impact in this world, there are 3 phases you're going to go through in the podcasting process to ultimately get to where you want to go. Phase 1 is 0 to podcast launch. Phase 2 is episode 0 to episode 20. And phase 3 is episode 20 to episode 100 plus. And what I'm going to do is break down each of these phases and how you can think about these. So phase 1 is 0 to podcast launch. And this is the hardest phase because everything is new and you've never done this before. It's also the phase that most people never get past. Why? And there's 2 reasons. Number 1, a lack of commitment, and number 2, uncertainty. So in terms of the lack of commitment, a lot of people like the idea of launching a podcast and have even thought about it for a while, but they aren't all in. They never actually get the process started. It just stays as an idea. Then there are those who start making progress and move forward on the launching of their podcast. But then business and life happens. They take their eye off the prize and stop taking consistent action. They allow other actions to take higher priority and they lose momentum. And I have a saying, the longer it takes for you to launch a podcast, the greater the chances of it not happening. And when you lose momentum, it can be tough to get back, especially if you don't have someone there to help support you on your journey. And then as for uncertainty, there's another quote that I love. Uncertainty leads to inaction. When you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what to do next, so it's a lot easier to not do anything. Yeah, you can try and figure out how to launch a podcast on your own. I did it. But it takes a very strong why and a lot of consistency and persistence as you've got to figure it out on your own. And that's why I created my Shining Your Voice podcasting program, to take away the uncertainty so that the process can be fun and easy. We've got a cohort starting soon. You can sign up at robcressy.com/voice. In the event that you have the commitment and that you get to the launch of your show, congratulations. You are now in the game. And this is where it starts to become a ton of fun because you're doing what you actually wanted to do. Talking into a microphone and sharing your thoughts and ideas with others. Now your podcast is a real thing that others can listen to. And that brings us to phase 2, getting from episode 0 to episode 20. And this phase is like riding a bike or learning how to ride a bike for the first time. The more reps you get in, the better you get. And with each subsequent episode that you publish, your confidence will start to grow more. You'll learn the nuances of what it takes to be good at podcasting. You learn by doing. And I found that episode 20 is a magic number. It's allowed you to do it for long enough to where you've had several light bulb moments go off, those ahas. And you'll also be self-aware enough to know how bad you were when you first started compared to where you are now. And that's a good thing because that's just part of the process of getting better. Once again, this is a phase that weeds out a ton of people. Most podcasts don't get past episode 7. Why? Because once again, people give up too quickly because of a lack of commitment. They allow other things to get prioritized ahead of publishing their podcast. If you don't have a strong enough why or someone there to help support you on your journey, your podcast can just fade away. And anytime I see someone struggling with publishing podcast episodes, I know why it is without even talking to them. They just aren't following a system or a process. Because hosting a weekly podcast doesn't have to be and shouldn't be hard. It should be easy. How? By following what I call the one perfect podcast process. So, since we have a long-term vision for using our podcast as a vehicle for growth, and there is no end in sight, then it would make sense for us to do the same thing over and over and over again every single time we publish a podcast. That way, it is easy to execute because we're following the same process, which saves us time because we don't have to figure out what to do next, which increases our quality because we are running an optimized system that is designed to do everything perfectly, which puts ourselves in the best position to succeed and get consistent results. Rinse and repeat into perpetuity. The other trap that people fall into is making their podcast too complex to execute. Oftentimes, this starts with poor podcast design right from the start. They think that their podcast needs to be 45 minutes or an hour, and because they've got a ton to say or because they want to share the stories of their guests that they want to interview. If they can't do that, then they don't think that they can publish a podcast episode. The reason that this is a trap is because the longer your podcast is, the more time it takes to execute. I get it. Finding 45 minutes or an hour to record an episode can be challenging for someone who is a high performer with an already packed schedule. But what if I told you that you could throw that excuse in the trash by shrinking the length of your podcast? Instead of 45 minutes or an hour for your episodes, what if your podcast was only 5 minutes long or 12 minutes long? Wouldn't that feel a lot less daunting? Yes. And here's the thing. Not only would it be easier for you to execute, you'd likely get better results because your episodes would be a lot more laser focused on one topic, because that's all the time that you would have for, which would force you to talk about just the most important and best and most transformative content. And here's the cherry on top. If we know that getting to episode 20 is the magic number, you have the ability to compress time if you would like. Yeah, you could do a weekly podcast that is 45 minutes long and publish one episode a week, and after 5 months, you would get to episode 20. Great. Or you could publish a podcast that is 3 days a week. Let's call it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That is only 10 minutes long per episode. That gets 20 episodes published in less than 2 months. I share this with you to get your gears turning about what's possible for you and your podcast. Phase 2 is the growth stage for you as a host, where you start to see the vision of what is possible. And once you get to episode 20, congratulations. It is time for phase 3. In phase 3 is rarefied air. Most podcasts never get here. This is the phase when you go from episode 20 to episode 100 plus. You've published podcasts enough times to know what you're doing. You're confident in who you are as a host. The light bulb has gone off multiple times for you. You've had those aha moments. You're no longer worried about not publishing podcast episodes because you've built the consistency in the process. You know that you can do it. You now see your podcast as a growth engine. And there is no stopping you, because why would you stop connecting with new people, building your audience, and creating impact in this world? You see what is possible. You've just transcended getting it launched, and now your podcast is a tool in your tool belt as a creator where you can do whatever you want with it. This is the phase where you break all of the rules that you've been taught. When launching a podcast for the first time, the biggest thing that you learn is consistency. How to do the same thing over and over and over again to get the results that you want, which at the beginning is just to get a live podcast episode. Because you're now at mastery level, you're living in your vision. You know, the more episodes that you publish, the more opportunities and the more impact that you will create. When previously it was, I need to publish an episode every Wednesday and all of my episodes are 30 minutes long. Now you can open up the possibilities of how else you could use your podcasting platform for good. What if in between my weekly episodes on Wednesdays, I did a 5 minutes in heaven with Rob, where I gave one nugget of wisdom that could help you on your journey? What if I asked my podcast guests one extra question at the end of every interview episode that I save for its own specific micro episode, a bonus that I publish a few days after the first one? What if I add a Q&A episode from questions I get asked from clients? What if I repurpose the live streams that I do on LinkedIn as another way of providing value for my audience? What if I did a solo episode of something that inspired me in real time and the episode was only 1 minute and 37 seconds long? What if becomes a prompt of possibility? No longer is your podcast rigid, but it is fluid. So you give yourself an opportunity if you want. And if you like the way that things are publishing consistently, then keep it simple. Keep doing your thing. But in phase 3, when you see that your podcast is the same way that others may see their YouTube channel or their Instagram channel, you can turn up and down your cadence in your content to your liking. This is also the phase in which you might be asking yourself, since I'm delivering such amazing audio content, what if I also start publishing the videos? Boom! That is when the next light bulb goes off. Now you're elevating your thought leadership by seeing your podcast as a multi-content vehicle for creating growth and impact in your business and your life. Yes, that creates a whole new process, which I'll share about in another video. But now you've created a new level of excitement and possibility, because now you can see how you can level up. And the best part is, this is all a ton of fun, and you're doing what you know in your heart you are meant to do. So those are the 3 phases of the podcasting process. And for those of you who are watching or listening to this that are already working with me, I'm excited about what's on the horizon for you. You've made the commitment to yourself, and I know there is so much good on the other side for you. And for those of you who are considering launching a podcast, and if you're looking to get your podcast launched faster and easier by following a proven blueprint, and you don't want to make the same mistakes that I did, then head to robcressy.com/voice to find out more.